Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Minecraft Myth Busting. In this one we're going to be investigating minecart rail efficiency. We're going to find out what is the most efficient way to lay out our rails for long distance travel. Now what I'm referring to is the distance between the powered rail that brings us up to full speed and the regular rail which we lose speed on. And there are two things here that we're going to be looking for. So the first one is the point at which we start to lose speed, and you can see that this minecart here clearly slows down. Now for the sake of example, let's say that no speed at all is lost on this rail compared to that one, then we can say that this is the more efficient way to lay it out because you're going to be using less powered rails. Now of course I'm assuming that powered rails are going to be more expensive for you, which is the most likely thing. Now the second thing that we're going to be looking for is the cost and speed efficiency. So let's say that this one right here you lose 10% speed but you use half the amount of powered rails, then you might just say that is the minecart track for me. I want to spend half the amount of powered rails and I'll take the 10% hit on speed. So we're going to find out the cost and speed efficiency rating of different track layouts as well. So of course the next thing to do is to set out a testing facility, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to do these tests. So how are we going to do this? Well, with this setup that we have right here, and we're going to use video footage. I'm going to record all of the testing, and then in my editing software I'm going to detect when the journey starts and when it ends, and we use that to calculate the speed of travelling from one side to the other. So the point at which it's going to start is when I press the button. So where did that minecart go? Okay, so it's going to start from where we press this button. So as soon as I press it, we start the timer going all the way across the rail, which is actually going to take a little bit of time by the looks of it, until we land on the pressure plate and the lamp here turns on. So the instance at which the lamp turns on is when I'm going to, stop the footage, and then I'll be able to measure the distance in time, and that'll tell us, exactly how long it took. So some of these tracks are obviously going to go slower. Now you could also argue that the way that I've done this, I've started off with one powered rail, one regular rail, one powered rail. We could go two powered then one normal, and you could do that on the extreme in the opposite direction, but unless this one is slower than this one right here, there's no real reason to do that, because of course we're trying to find out the efficiency of being cost effective with the amount of powered rails that we're using. So then it just goes out, you can see it, each one increases by 1 all the way up to 20 on the end, and I think the distance is over 200 blocks as well, which I think is a fair test. You could argue that some of these are going to end with the powered rails not as close to the end bit, but there's always going to be some kind of discrepancy, I guess you could guess, and we're just trying to get a fair estimate here, and I think this is going to be a decent test to do so. So I'm going to start doing all of these tests, I'm going to record it all, and then we can get these numbers together. One of the things I love about this game and this series is when we do testing and get really unexpected results, which is exactly what I've got for you right here. Now we've set out to learn two things, and we've learnt the first one, which is the amount of rails we can put in between each of the powered rails without losing any speed compared to having constant powered rails, and that is 4. So 4 rails in between each powered rail, and you're not going to lose any speed at all. So on your screen you're going to see the side-by-side comparison, and I do just want to mention here that I changed the parameters a little bit. I did it from where the minecart started to move backwards. You can clearly see that in the footage as we're facing the button. So rather than starting it from the button press, it's when the player actually starts to move in the minecart, and it took just a fraction over 20 seconds to travel from this side all the way to the opposite side. So on to the unexpected and remarkable result of our testing. We've got 20 rails in between each of the powered rails on this far line, and you may be thinking that's going to add a lot of time as you travel from one side to the other, but the answer is that it's less than a second, which is quite remarkable. Now because we're talking in fractions of a second here, 0.60 is going to be the equivalent of 1 second. So if we go back to the 5th rail down here, the one after the 4th, which is the same speed as just having powered rails all the way across, we lose 0.02 seconds, and that is absolutely fractional. Now when we come up here to the 20th rail, and that's got 20 rails in between each powered rail, we lose 0.26 seconds. That's less than half a second travelling over 200 blocks, which is really remarkable. I did not expect it to be that effective to have such a big gap in between. So obviously at this point we need to do more testing, and if you're wondering, that's an average of 0.016 seconds for each rail that you add in between your powered rails. But anyway, as I said, we need to expand this test and do even more. So my objective for this episode was to give you all a rating system so you could determine how much speed you would lose compared on how many rails you have in between each powered one. And at the moment that's looking a little bit tricky because since we've gone above 20, the results are starting to become very inconsistent. I'm finding that occasionally one rail will be slightly quicker or slightly slower, and we're probably talking about half a second at tops difference. But what I thought it might be is the ones that have the extra powered rails closer to the end due to where the cutoff distance is, and that's actually not the case. The changes seem to be a little bit random and I can't quite put my finger on what's causing it. So at the moment I'm going to come back to that later on. I'm hoping I'll be able to suss out the maths behind all of that. And I did another test where I sat on the rail that had no powered rails at all, so you can see I've replaced them over here. What I found was interesting is that we managed to come out 126 blocks just from the beginning alone. So technically you can make a rail with 125 in between each one. But what was really weird is that when sitting in the minecart, the thing would shuffle along at like a block by block pace. I don't know how to describe it really, but you'll see it in this replayed footage that it just shuffles along a little bit at a time. It stops moving and then it moves again. It's really bizarre. But anyway, we're going to move on to a different test now, as there's some other information I want to show you about these minecarts. Some of you may have noticed that minecarts without players in move slower than when they do have a player in. So now we can ask the same questions of minecarts without players. How efficient are these track layouts going to be for them? Because sometimes we build tracks that aren't for players to use. So you can see with some redstone we can launch all of these at once, and this is not going to be the proper test, but I am going to properly test this once again using recorded footage to analyse when they all move and what speed they move at. And what is surprising here is that minecart chests appear to be at a similar speed to that of the player because there is no decay. At least all of them are moving at the same speed. So now if we do this with minecarts without a player, you'll see that it's not quite the same. So let's activate them all at the same time, and we can see that the first three appear to be about the same speed, and then, or maybe actually the third one lags a little bit behind, then the fourth, fifth and sixth lag even further behind. So we're going to repeat some of these tests with minecarts with chests and hoppers and find out what the difference is. So the minecart hopper and the minecart chest actually travel at the same speed as the player, and then a minecart with TNT and a minecart travel at the same speed as one another, which is significantly slower. So I'm going to put the results on your screen. You can see if you need to move empty minecarts around, or minecarts with TNT, that with no regular rails or 1 and 2 between the powered rails, they all travel at the same speed, and then you could get away with having 3 or 4, but after that the drop off is rather sharp. And then if you have any more than 8, i.e. you have 9 or more, it's not going to be able to travel between the powered rails. So let's go back to the player travelling across these tracks. Earlier in the video I think I mentioned that this is going to be 200 blocks across. That's what I intended for it to be. Turns out it's 164. Not sure how I managed to get that one wrong, but all the tests of course have been done on the same distance, so that's a good thing. But when it comes to the results, I've been unable to work out like a mathematic formula or something that's going to be precise in a way for you to use to figure out, you know, how much rails you want to put in between for how much time it's going to take off your journey. And I've run out of time really to actually make up my mind on what to do here, so I'm basically going to say, so all of the testing that I've done has taken a very long time. You know, to record all of these journeys, then map out how long they took in my editing software takes a very long time. So in the description box you're going to find some of the key numbers in increments of 5 for you to use, and hopefully that information will be useful to you. I'm sorry this didn't quite work out how I hoped, ran into a bit of a problem with the maths there, but sometimes these things happen. Anyway, that's it from me this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do leave a like. As always, thank you for your support on this series, and if you like myth busting, of course check out the myth busting playlist. There are tons of videos there for you to binge watch if you want to do so. Anyway, that's it from me this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.